Hi.
Hello. So looking forward to chatting to you today.
Likewise.
Just before we start, I would like to acknowledge the land that I'm meeting from today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Where are you zooming from in your car?
I'm assuming from northern in Western Australia, so it's about an hour and a half out of Perth. Yeah, so it's part of like the Noongar Nation, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, great. You're on
Yeah,
a bit of a road trip.
bit of a road trip back home. Yes, yes. It's been like almost 2 years since I've been back, so it'll be nice to get back to where I'm from, which would yeah, I can't wait. I'm excited and
Yeah.
I'm happy. It's gonna be like a good, refreshing reset. It's
Well,
been a
we'll
busy
talk
two
about
years.
it has been a busy 2 years, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Firstly, congratulations on being a recipient of the CGA Rising Star Award.
Thank you, thank you. It's amazing. It's awesome. Like I was walking with my grandmother when my agent emailed me, and I was like, "Holy snap, this is amazing!" I was like, and it's perfect timing because I was just about to leave Hamilton as well. It's like, oh wow, 2 days before I'm leaving, I'm not worried at all.
That's great. And of course, your star has been shining quite brightly for a while now,
Thank you.
with a fabulous body of work. And I know you've just left Melbourne recently, the Melbourne season of Hamilton,
Hmm.
which I did have the pleasure of seeing, and
Awesome.
and saw you in action, which was just fabulous.
Ah, nice. I'm glad you saw me.
Yeah, no, it was great. The general rule of thumb is that, have no expectation and you won't be disappointed, but you can't do that with Hamilton, can you? Like everyone
Yeah,
has
yeah. It was a very tricky one because like when you learn how kind of obsessed and how much the fans are in love with the show, there is always going to be some form of expectation. So you're like, okay, I got to give them what they want, plus do something a little different, so it's not an exact copy.
Mm.
And I think that's where the excitement with it came as well, which is it's challenging but exciting at the same time. You're like, okay, hopefully they like this, and
Yeah, they liked
thank
it.
God
I
they
was
did.
there. They loved it.
Awesome.
But I wanted to ask, I mean, what do you do when Alexander Hamilton comes knocking at your door? How did that conversation go down with your agent?
Well, that um I was in London working on a show and my agent sent me an email and she's like, "Hey, I got your audition for Hamilton." I'm like, "What's that?" And she goes, do some research." So I checked it out. I was like, "Yo, this sounds all right, Mags, but I know nothing about music. I'm not a musical person." She's like, "I know." And I was like, "I hate singing in front of people." And she's like, "Yeah. But I want to challenge you, get you out of your comfort zone." So I was like, "All right, let's give it a go." I
Feel
go in, do the audition, nervous as hell. I'm honest. I'm like, I know nothing about music, but I'm here just to give it a go. I give it a go. I don't know how I went. And yeah, I call up my agent. I'm like, "Hey, did my best. Don't think we're gonna get a call back." And yeah, about 2 months later, we get a call back, and then I end up in Sydney doing the call back, and that went really well. And it just kept going. I was like, "Hey, if we get this job, then I'm not sure if we're going to take it." We weren't sure if we're going to take the job because it's like, you're locked in for a whole year. So it's like, what do we do? But COVID made it an easy choice.
well, yeah,
And yeah, I have no regrets. It was a challenging experience, but amazing. Talented people that you get to be surrounded by
that's
daily. But exhausting work, but worth it. And,
it's
I was like,
incredible, actually, just that degree of stamina, physically, verbally. I mean, it is extraordinary to watch. But I just wanted to ask there, you are with the collective management,
yeah,
and I love that sort of, behind the scenes conversation and that
yes.
relationship. Can you tell us a little bit more about your perspective on the actor and agent relationship? How would you describe that?
I think for me personally, I think one of the best kind of relationships you can have with your agent is one where you can both be professional and personal because you need them to kind of know who you are and have this form of trust so that they know exactly the best way to challenge you, to push you, the kind of jobs that would be good for you and your career, and their belief in you is going to be even greater because they want the best for you as well.
Mm.
And I have that with my agents, and it's amazing because we get to have an honest conversation about things, and respectful conversations. Like, for example, coming off Hamilton, my agent was like, "Yeah, you definitely need a break. You need like a couple months rest and to reset and recharge." And I definitely needed that.
Mm. Oh,
But
I
the
can
stubborn
really
side of me is like, I gotta work. But she's like, no, you gotta rest.
yeah, that's great. And yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, just extraordinary reception at Hamilton. But how do you sort of sustain that level of energy? I mean, are you allowed to go out on a school night? Are you going to bed early, or you can't necessarily go
Oh,
to bed early? What
yeah.
do you
I mean,
eat?
everyone has their own way of finding energy and to have that endurance in that kind of world with the musicals. For me, I kind of made sure that I had some kind of a life outside of work.
Love
So
that for you.
sometimes I would go out on a school night, and go out on the town and have some fun, listen to some good music, live music, completely opposite to what I was doing for work. And yeah, and hanging out with friends and stuff like that, that gave me energy because it didn't feel like I was doing the same thing every day. So to break a kind of routine and, not get your days blurred up because you did something different, I ended
Mm.
up finding a lot of energy in that, even though going out can be exhausting sometimes.
It certainly can.
Yeah.
You've got to have a bit of yin and a bit of yang, don't you?
You really do. You got to find that balance. If you don't have that balance, you can burn out. But then if you have, too much going on both sides, you burn out on both ends. So once you find that fine balance, I think that's where you really figure it out on how to have the energy to get through a show, like 8 shows a week and, double
Mm.
weekends, which is brutal. But yeah, like coming out of it, I was like, wow, I feel great in the first week out. Second week, I was like, uh-oh, my body knows I'm not working anymore, so it's just like shutting down. I'm like, this hurts. What's wrong with
Yeah.
my ankle? And then the third week was just uh yeah, like all the fatigue catching up to me. So it was strange how my mind and body kind of helped me get through it.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting and it's common, isn't it? That sort of
Yeah,
there's a space. And I'm interested in that as well because, to have continued work for anyone in our industry is
yeah.
a privilege afforded to very few.
Mm.
And there's always going to be spaces. What do you do in the spaces? How do you navigate your way? I mean, you're obviously on a road trip now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The way I navigate through those downtimes, because ever since I turned 18, I haven't really lived at home. So I spent most of my time over east.
Mm,
And so in my downtime, I'm usually trying to catch up with my family and friends and spend as much time as possible.
mm,
And when I come back, I get to do like archaeological work
mm.
back where I'm from. So I get to go out with my people and survey the country and find like artifacts,
What a
anything to
fantastic
do with that.
balance. Isn't
It
that
is,
great?
because you get a
Yeah.
lot of culture at the same time. You learn your history, you see your country, and
Yeah.
you get paid to do it. And then, you get a call and you're like, okay, I'm off to do a job over east, which is a whole different world.
And you're not
But
just
yeah,
ringing your
it's
agent at 1 a.m. in the morning and saying, I just had a great
yeah,
interview.
yeah. The time difference doesn't help it right now.
That's great. Yeah, that's really interesting. I do find, yeah, those spaces interesting, as I say, for everyone.
Yeah.
But you've worked, you've done a musical. You've worked in film as well, and of course, The Flood. That's a pretty tough day at the office, isn't it? Gosh, what there's
Yeah.
enduring sort of hard scenes there. How do you work around that? How do you unpack a day at work with
Well,
some of that?
with
Amazing job, by the way.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a tough one trying to find like that kind of vulnerability and that strength at the same time with that character in the flood.
Mm,
Um and that film itself, like the story, those stories I grew up knowing.
Mm,
So for me, it wasn't hard to kind of accept that and go through that kind of preparing all those scenes in my mind, like mentally and emotionally. That, yeah, that didn't really, it wasn't too hard for me because I was like, I know these stories. I've been told these stories as a kid.
mm,
So growing up, I'm like having this opportunity to tell these stories and be given that responsibility.
mm,
For me, that was it was a proud moment to be a part of something like that and to be, as a kid, I grew up on a horse station for
mm.
a few years. So
That was
it
handy, wasn't
was,
it?
it really was. And it was so dope. I was like, and I grew up watching Western movies, like all the Clint Eastwood films. So I was like, oh yeah, this is my vibe. I get to ride horses, bit of gunslinging, and then, and then have heaps of like scenes where my acting can just be like, oh yeah, I can really dig into this scene emotionally. And
Yeah.
so yeah, it was that film honestly was a lot of fun, and it was a beautiful film to be a part of because we
Mm,
had the people from the urination were in there as well,
mm,
and they were part of the film, and they were also cultural consultants. So we had like the best team, and it was just the vibe, and everyone were respectful of each other
mm.
and understanding. And some of the really difficult scenes, we all came together to get through it and help people who were struggling with it.
Yeah. Oh,
So it
that's
was a
good.
really great project to be a part of. Yeah.
Yeah. And such beautiful cinematography as well.
Oh,
Just so that's what was so hard, isn't it? It's just these sort of awful,
yeah.
intense sort of scenes, and then juxtaposed with this beautiful landscape and
Yeah. Kevin Scott is amazing.
mm,
That
yeah.
cinematography and that, like, I remember shooting some of the scenes and then getting a sneaky peek at the rushes and being like, oh my goodness, that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, well, congratulations again on a beautiful
Thank you.
performance in the flood. What is your perspective on, inclusion or First Nations sort of representation on our screens at the moment? Are we getting
Yeah.
anything?
It's, honestly, it's getting better. Like, it's slowly getting better, though.
Mm,
Like you turn on the TV and it's very, very rare still. Even in a lot of our popular TV shows, it's still very rare. And another thing I think that is a miss is most of the time when we have First Nations people cast in something, they're cast as First Nation rather than just a character.
mm.
It'll be very nice to just see a police officer or a doctor, or a detective or a firefighter, any kind of character just
The
happens to
fourth, the
be
fourth,
First
fourth president of the United States.
Nation. Yeah, they just happen to be First Nation. I reckon as soon as like once we get to that, I think then it'll be a whole lot better because then it's fair game and it's all based on if you're actually right for the role, if your acting is right, if the way you're playing that character is like blending in perfectly, like the chemistry with everyone else is going well. I think, yeah, it'd be more about your actual skill rather than you just being First Nation.
Yeah, yeah. Which
Yeah.
yeah, still got a way to go, as you say.
Yeah, but it's getting better. There are more First Nations people in the arts and on TV and film, which is great. But now we just need to get past that step where they can play just characters rather than First Nation characters.
Yeah. And I'm going to ask you just a couple of quick fire questions just to wrap up our conversation. But one thing, fancy dress parties. Now, are you someone that's going to just sort of grab an eye patch and some sunglasses and
I'm one of those people who I did this just recently at one of my friends' birthday parties. They booked out this bar and it was a fantasy disco. Um and that was the theme and everyone got dressed up, but I didn't have anything in my closet. I didn't have time to go and shop for a costume, so I rocked up pretty basic, like blue jeans, white button-up shirt. And I look and everyone's like going hard out. So my trick was get there, and if I feel left out, I just take one item from a whole bunch of people and create a costume at the party. And it
Or
actually
just
worked out.
belt out a song from Hamilton. I mean, you know.
Yeah, well, most of them were Hamilton people too. So I was like, yeah, I can't sing as good as them. But yeah, it turned out to be a pretty awesome costume. I was like, wow, I feel like a character from Cyberpunk or something, you know?
Oh, well done. A couple of last rapid fire questions. Melbourne or Sydney?
Mmm. Melvin.
Melbourne? Controversial.
Yeah, because the
No.
food.
Anti-hero or hero?
Oh, anti-hero. That way you don't have limitation.
Yeah, great. Eating in or dining out?
Oh, 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 that's a tough one. I love food, so I'm gonna say eating in.
Oh, you went the Uber Eats option. And land or sea?
Land.
Land.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm mostly an inland person, so
Yeah, and it's so great that you've got this opportunity to catch up with, family and friends in your new car.
yeah, yeah. I haven't had a car in like 5 years or something, so it's nice.
It's
Nice to be
really
able to go when you want.
well, I have to say it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for your time
Thank you.
today.